Our next set of talks is going to be focused around scaling your community and the different forms that can take depending on size, budget, and industry. So we're going to start with our next speaker, who built the largest tourism industry community in a Sydney youth hostel. He's going to share how word of mouth, 3 simple rules, and a bold plan to unearth and connect everyone in tourism industry created a force of good in over 50 countries with over 30,000 members. He is the first person that I've ever met from Tasmania. So, yeah, super cool guy. He is the founder of Travel Massive, the world's largest tourism industry network, which connects innovators, creators, and leaders in the global tourism industry. He also created an open source Travel Massive's community and event platform, which connects over 30,000 members in 174 countries. He's traveled quite a bit. He also founded and invested in a number of Australian startup companies. Please welcome Ian Cumming.
Oh, wow, thank you. Thanks, Lala. Wow, great to be here. So as you can probably hear, I sound a little bit different, and that's yes, because I grew up in Australia, in Tasmania, which, someone's from Tasmania? Oh, Australia. Awesome. G'day. So what I'm going to be doing is sharing with you some short stories and some learnings from 7 years that I've spent building the Travel Massive community. And just a quick poll of everyone that's here. Who here is, just put your hand up if you're in an online community, you're running an online community, you're managing online community. Online, wow, lots of online. And what if you're working in offline communities? Okay, cool. So hopefully there's some value for both different groups, and I'll try to sort of give you some points for both offline and online. So I'm just going to kind of dive into the deep end right now and just sort of show you a map of where Travel Massive is today. And each of those little red pins there is a chapter of Travel Massive. So what is Travel Massive? It's a worldwide community or network of like locally organized chapters. And in those chapters, we have chapter leaders. And those chapter leaders volunteer their time. They're incredible and amazing people. And they bring together the tourism industry together in those cities to meet, to learn, to do business, create partnerships, to figure out where to travel next. And our members in Travel Massive are people that are connected to travel. They're connected to tourism. So some examples might be someone that works at an online travel agency like Priceline or Expedia, or perhaps Airbnb. We've got some members in Airbnb. It might be a travel agent. It could be an airline pilot. It could be a travel blogger or a travel writer. It's basically anyone that has anything to do with travel. And you know, the tourism industry is pretty much the world's biggest commercial industry. It employs like 1 in 11 people all around the world. It's 9% of world GDP. I'm pretty sure that everyone, unless you live in this building, you traveled here, which meant that you either, if you drove here on an Uber, you caught a plane here, you're staying in a hotel, all of those activities of how you searched for, booked, and share your travel, all of those companies are part of the Travel Massive community. And it didn't start this big, obviously. And the question is, you guys are probably asking is, why is there a Tasmanian that's standing up here on stage telling you about the world tourism industry? And so kind of, I'll give you the real 20-second story, because this is not really a story about myself. This is a story about Travel Massive. But I grew up in Tasmania, and when I was 26, I decided that I had to escape. Basically, there's only 500,000 people in Tasmania, and it's a very small island, and I decided that all my friends were getting married and having kids, and I was like, I have to see the world. So I decided that I was going to build a travel startup, because that was a great way for me to see the world. And I ended up getting acquired by a company in Sydney that bought my business out, and they said, hey, Ian, you have to now move to Sydney, to do your earn out and come and work with us. So I moved to Sydney in 2010, and I was, Sydney is it's a really hard place to get an apartment, so I was living in a hostel for about 3 months. And I realized that I didn't know anyone in the tourism industry. And I really wanted to kind of learn and to meet people. And I'd been in San Francisco the year before, and San Francisco has this huge kind of like tech startup scene, and everyone's into meeting up. And I was like, why isn't there something like this for the travel industry? So I basically sent out a tweet, and I said, hey, anyone who works in travel, I'm staying at the YHA in Sydney, and do you want to come and meet up and let's hang out? And I think 6 people turned up to that very first meetup, and we snuck into like the barbecue and stole some sausages, and then someone brought a 6-pack of beer, and we had this amazing discussion, and we all agreed that we would meet next month and bring a friend. So then 12 people turned up the next month. And then the next month, like 30 people turned up, and it kind of turned into this thing, right? And it was really cool, but something really unique happened. And actually, I'm really honored that one of those people is here in the audience, that actually is part of the reason why I'm here, is that 2 friends of mine that were expats that were living in Sydney were coming to our meetups, and they eventually went back home because, the Australian government, kicked them out and said that their visas were expired. And Michael and Alicia's here today. And Alicia, sent me this email, and she said, hey, I loved what you did in Sydney with this travel meetup. Do you mind if I do the same thing, and could I call it the same name? And I was like, that's awesome. Then we can be like international, and we can tweet each other and, have lots of fun. So Alicia did that. Michael in London started a chapter. And then we had 3 chapters, and it really was amazing because we could tweet each other, and we could see each other's communities, build and grow as we went along. And so anyway, to cut a very long story short, Travel Massive is now in 150 cities around the world with this chapter model. We have 34,000 members, which, lots of people that are working in the travel industry and creating the future of travel. They're travel startups, travel bloggers, and we're all working to kind of create the future of travel. So that's Travel Massive kind of on a map, and this is Travel Massive sort of in pictures, just to sort of give you an idea. So, these are all meetups. These are all people meeting, sharing, connecting. I moved to Bangkok about 3 years ago so I could sort of help build Travel Massive in Asia. Asia is now a bigger tourism market than the United States. So, I mean, it's incredible, the amount of growth in Asia. So we started Travel Massive in Asia, Travel Massive Europe, and so I've got a really funny story to tell you here, which is I sort of try to do these April Fool's Day jokes with our community and try to trick them that Travel Massive has done something really awesome. So 2 years ago, I did an April Fool's Day joke that Travel Massive had bought a Greek island. And everyone fell for it. And everyone was like, oh my God, how did you buy this Greek island? So it happened to be that there was the Greek financial crisis. So there was a little bit of truth that maybe Travel Massive could have bought a Greek island. But something really incredible happened is that we got this sort of phone call from someone who actually did own a Greek island, and he was a Greek billionaire. He owned half the island of Ios, and he said, I saw your story, do you want to come and hang out on my island? It's like, okay, that sounds like a great idea. So we organized an event where we brought about 20 of our members from all around the world, and we hung out on this Greek island with this billionaire. But it wasn't really about hanging out with, rich people. He had a problem that he wanted to solve, which was this island had a tourism problem that the season was very short, it was a very small island, and how could they solve all these sort of different problems, and how could they kind of like reinvigorate the tourism on the island? And so we actually ran an unconference, a Travel Massive unconference on that island, And we worked with locals and we met with them and we came up with all these really amazing ideas about how we could solve their tourism problems. So that's a great example of what Travel Massive can do. And we also just recently launched a chapter in Kosovo. It's not recognized by the United Nations, so we had to add it into the database as a country, so we could put it on that map. And I think that that's really awesome that we can kind of do those sorts of things. Africa is also a really sort of important part of Travel Massive. 3 years ago, we started a chapter in Cape Town. It's now one of our biggest chapters. Africa, a lot of the tourism that happens, a lot of the business and export that Africa does is tourism. So tourism is a really important part of Africa, but they feel like they're disconnected from the rest of the world. And we have these events and meetups where we educate tour operators about how to get online, how they can sell their business and connect with travel agents all around the world. So that's sort of Travel Massive in a nutshell. So this quick storyline here is, and I'm sort of an angel investor, and I've also report to my investors. And this is sort of a story format that I like to use, which is good, bad, and ugly, which is sort of here's the good stuff that we're successful at. The bad stuff is what is a challenge, and the ugly stuff is what we failed at. And I think, recognizing failure is really important, and I also want to share with you some of the failures, because we certainly didn't get to where we're at without making, a ton of mistakes. So we'll start with the good stuff. So the 3 simple rules that we started Travel Massive with, and actually there was probably this one rule to begin with, which was don't be a dickhead. And to translate that, it's don't be a douchebag. And that was the one guiding rule, that we were not going to have any dickheads in Travel Massive. But we thought, how do we sort of flesh this out? And I like this concept of an anti-pattern. So it's what can we do that's different? So the first thing is to make it free. So not only free in that it's free to join, you don't have to pay money to join, but free is in freedom. Free is in you can come in and you can express your ideas. You can meet with anyone you want. You don't have to feel, that you've got to kind of pay or be a special kind of person to come in. It was free to everyone and also open to everyone. So, the travel industry 10 years ago was very much sort of siloed. And, one example is travel bloggers. We all know about travel bloggers and Instagrammers and all these people that are influencing travel. They were not considered part of the travel industry 10 years ago, and yet they're a huge part of it. So we allowed anyone into our meetups, anyone that was connected to travel. And then a really third important rule was to share, because this concept of sharing your ideas, keep meeting people that say, I've got this great idea in travel, but I can't tell you about it unless you sign an NDA. And I just say, look, I'm not signing an NDA because you haven't thought of every idea that's thinkable has been thought of by someone else. The thing about the travel industry is that if we share our ideas, we're co-opetition, right? So why don't we come together, share our ideas, and then we can come up with even more awesome ideas that will really make travel better. So this is a photo that I really love. I found it on Flickr. It's from, I look a lot younger there, and that's because I'm how old am I? I'm 30 years old. And but what's really cool about this photo, we didn't know, this was in a backpacker bar called the Scary Canary, which was completely, this is basically before the wet t-shirt competition, started. But we all got together, and sitting in the front there is Alicia Taggio, who started the Toronto Travel Massive chapter. And, give her a round of applause, because she is why I'm standing on stage, and I think this amazing, photo kind of captures this. And I, know pretty much everyone here, and I still keep in touch with these people today. I think that another really important thing is to have a purpose. And so, when I was in Saigon at a Saigon Travel Massive, I met this travel startup, and these guys were from Spain, and they were working out an app to basically put all the ferry timetables and bus timetables in Vietnam online on an app. And I thought that was really amazing. They were trying to make travel better. But what was more important is that I could meet those guys in Saigon, and I could connect them with members in our community all around the world and tell their story. And so, it's taken me quite a long time to try to figure out what on earth this Travel Massive thing is. But after talking to so many people and sort of seeing the different use cases, I think the main thing is that people want to be part of our community because we have a purpose, because we're all about unearthing and finding those people all around the world, connecting them together in order to make travel better. So this is part of the Travel Massive manifesto, which we put online. I think another really important thing is to have a set of values. You know, I mean, this is kind of obvious stuff, but like, you know, the tourism industry, you know, when I started going to travel conferences, all I would see on stage are like white, middle-aged American men. And, you know, the travel industry, especially in Travel Massive, is the majority, you know, more than half of the members in the people in our community are women. So why aren't women, you know, standing on stage and are CEOs of companies? So I think, you know, Travel Massive really should have a purpose about trying to like kind of solve some of these problems that our industry has. This is, I'll tell you a real sort of quick story about this idea of co-ownership. And, you know, I kind of stumbled upon this sort of by accident, but Travel Massive actually used to be called Travel Tribe when we started out. And, you know, once we got to kind of like 3 or 4 chapters, I got this really angry letter saying that someone owned a trademark and he was going to sue me unless I changed the name, and I better watch out, blah, blah, blah. And so I got some legal advice, and they're like, yeah, you have to change the name of Travel Tribe. And so I spent all this time trying to, like, walking down the street thinking, you know, what can I rename this community that we've already started? And I had this, like, I was going through all the words that started with travel, you know, and I got to Travel Massive. And I thought, massive, like, and I remembered back, like, in the 90s when I used to go to, like, rave parties, and, like, we're listening to, like, jungle and drum and bass, and, you know, they would say, like, the Massive and crew. And I was like, you know, that feeling of like being surrounded by all these amazing people that are really into something, I was like, yeah, we can be the Travel Massive. So we called ourselves Travel Massive, and I just made up this tagline, which is be part of something massive. But, you know, it was sort of quite accidental. But this photo here is our Edinburgh chapter having their like 2nd birthday party, and they printed out this sign and started taking photos, and then they tweeted that. You know, I've never met these people in person. And yet they've taken our brand and they've sort of built it into their own. So I think a really important thing is to have co-ownership. So another thing that I think has benefited us is our platform. And as Lala said, I actually open sourced the Travel Massive platform. And the reason I did that is that we were originally on Meetup back in the day, and Meetup kept like squashing Meetup groups because we were violating their sort of terms of service. So I was like, Meetup sucks. I'm gonna like build my own. So I decided, I went to Portugal, and I got a little sort of development team together and spent about 3 months working with some developers, and we built our own platform. And one of the things I decided when we launched our platform was I was gonna make our platform open source. And really the reason is, you know, the value of Travel Massive is not our technology, the value is our community. And so by open sourcing our platform, it would allow anyone that had a community, that had chapters and events and wanted to have profiles, to be able to like build their own platform. So I'm really proud of this because our platform powers 2 other communities. One's called Hardware Massive, which is all about hardware making, and Mappy Hour. Sarah from Mappy Hour is here, and that's like an outdoor enthusiast community. So it's really awesome. I think that we open sourced it. So if you want to find it, just search for Massive Platform or come and ask me about it. These are some sort of photos. Our platform enables like profiles, company profiles, event management, chapters, and all that kind of stuff. This is, I think, probably the biggest thing you know, the biggest value of Travel Massive is this concept of like online and offline, but merging it. So, you know, while we might only have 34,000 members, you know, and I've been listening to the size of communities that are out there that are super big, way bigger than Travel Massive. But Travel Massive is like a trusted community because you're meeting the people you know, you're meeting that person that runs that Twitter account or that works for that business. You're meeting them face to face. So what happens is that we have this sort of amplification where people meet offline, build up trust, and then online they reciprocate and they connect with each other even more. And you know, just to give you an example of this sort of amplification is that There's about 6,000 travel bloggers, Instagrammers, YouTubers that are part of Travel Massive, and their reach to their audiences is about 500 million people per month. So, and the brands that are inside of Travel Massive, their reach is about over 1 billion consumers every month are going to their websites. So Travel Massive has this huge amplification that we have online through our members. And so I think that that's the real sweet spot. If you can build a community that has offline and online, that's awesome, but it's also a lot of hard work. So, and this is a quick graph of our scale that we had, and where it starts going up is where we launched the platform. So, basically build a platform, launch it, bring people onto it, and you can get a lot of scale. This is some sort of challenges that we've had building it. One is chapters. We thought, yeah, we're going to get to 100 chapters, and we got there, and then there were 200 chapter leaders, and 200 chapter leaders all, asking questions, and how do I do this and that, and providing resources. Working with humans is, as you guys probably know, really a lot of hard work. So scaling beyond that has taken us a lot more time. The other thing is, once we get someone to their first event, their first Travel Massive event, how do we get them to their second or third or fourth? So, that's a sort of a challenge with scaling. And, we basically have to engage our community more. And in fact, of the 34,000 people that are part of Travel Massive, I think something like 15,000 people have not actually been to an event. And I view that as sort of an opportunity, but a challenge. Is it because we don't have a chapter in that city? Is it because they can't get to an event? So there's a lot of hard sort of work there. The other thing is, and I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to kind of skip through this a little bit, but is this thing called a culture shift. So as Travel Massive, as we built Travel Massive, I brought investors on board. And so obviously investors want a return on investment, but your community and your volunteers, they're really in it for the love of it. And sort of trying to balance this balancing act of we have investors and they want money, and we have customers, and then we have our community. It's sort of you've kind of got this scale, and it's really hard to kind of find that sweet spot in the middle. The other thing that has been a challenge is, I call this the money paradox. And that is that, while we have volunteers, and so the story of Travel Massive is we're trying to make ourselves sustainable. So we are implementing sort of revenue models into Travel Massive. But once you start talking to someone about money, it's a different set of motivations. We've learnt this kind of the hard way, where we thought we could drag all these volunteers that were motivated by professional advantage and recognition and go, yeah, we're going to help you pay your rent. But it doesn't really work like that. So that's sort of been a challenge. And I kind of get to the real ugly stuff now, but, and this is really hard for me to say on stage, but basically running out of money sucks. It's the worst thing that, you could ever happen. And we're a tiny startup company, but, what happened at the beginning of this year is I actually ran out of money, completely ran out of money. And, we had made a mistake last year by, with sort of our revenue model. We weren't getting enough traction. We found ourselves, pretty much only being able to pay for the server hosting bills, and that's a real challenge, as the founder of this community. And everyone kind of expects that Travel Massive is this big global thing, and we've got lots of money and we can fly people around. But in reality, we're kind of had been in this situation where we had run out of money. And so I did a lot of soul searching, but also a lot of data analysis of how we had spent, we basically spent about $500,000 over the last 3 years building the Travel Massive community. And I was it was a really sobering thought to kind of say, okay, I've spent $500,000 on this community and we're out of money. But I think, and one of the really most amazing things that happened this year is, and we'll go back and I'll end on this note, is that I was in this hostel, because again, I had no money, in San Francisco, and there was an Airbnb sticker on the fridge. And it happened to be April Fool's Day. And I was thinking, oh, what can I do for April Fools? Let's trick the community again. And so I made up this sort of press release that the Travel Massive had been bought out by Airbnb. I was like, I've got nothing to lose. Airbnb is also a private company, so they're probably less likely to sue me. And, you know, and if they did, I don't have any money anyway, so fuck it, I'm going to do it. So I put out this press release that, you know, if you really read it, we said that we'd been taken over by Airbnb, and it was great because we could now have koalas in the office, you know. And so if you really read it, you knew that it was a joke. But this incredible thing happened. It was like the lowest moment that I was at in terms of, like, you know, absolutely no money. And the response was amazing. Our community loved it. They thought it was the best thing ever. And I just got responses and messages and phone calls by all these people that were so excited that Travel Massive was acquired by Airbnb. And even I thought that it had happened, you know, because it almost felt so real. But that got me off the ground because, you know, the thing is that the community will always lift you back up. And, you know, and of course everyone understood it was a joke in the end and they thought it was pretty funny. But what was really interesting is that dreaming, you know, that sort of saying, this is what we could be or this is what we could become, you know, and all of that amazing positive feedback from our community really kind of elevated me and, you know, helped me sort of get going. So I'll end on this, which is, you know, the goal of Travel Massive is we want to be a force of good for travel. You know, the tourism industry and travel is so important for this world, and I think, you know, Travel Massive can really make an impact on that. So I want to thank you all for listening to me, and thanks.